What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, with another deep dive review of a Frank Zappa live show that is out there circulating in the internet's world. It is on YouTube. But another piece of evidence in my case for why I think the Summer Fall 1974 tour is the best tour Frank ever went on. There's other contenders that 82, 82 maybe. I don't know. What else do people put up there? I'd put 82. I just think this is just absolutely a fantastic tour. And this show is just absolutely amazing. The guitar playing on here is just 79 heights, like the Inca Roads in 79, or like like there's been a number of Inca Road solos from 79, not the Inca Roads, just the solos released, all the shut and play your guitars, Occam's Razor, other things on guitar. They're just epic solos. And I think the Montana solo in this show, we're approaching that level, if not at that level, just with a different drummer and a different rhythm section, different era of Frank's style of playing, but still that amount of epicness. Plus, you have the best band he ever had. Tom Fowler's hand is still broken, but James Birdlegs Humans is doing such a good job at filling in. This is only his second show, Frank states, when he announces the band later on, that when he does those band announcements later on, he even says that, points out Tom Fowler, who apparently is on the stage. His hand is broken. When his hand comes back, he'll be back in the band, and James Birdlegs Yeoman will be a part of the band at that point. That doesn't actually pan out. But Frank was really high on this guy. And the bass playing in this show is fantastic. There are a couple times in sort of the ridiculously fast songs where it maybe kind of stands out. It's like, okay, he's not Tom Fowler, he has only learned these songs for less than a week at this point, or been trying to learn them. So he gets all the slack in the world. But it is just amazing. The stuff he does in the solos, the stuff he does in the grooves, the Dynamo Hum-like breakdown, the whole 30-minute George thing. Birdlegs is absolutely fantastic. Frank is delivering next-level solos. The set list is perfectly standard. We get what is now just the codified set list. We don't have the Don't Eat the Yellow Snow at the end, but we do have a Montana and a 30-minute, essentially, George finger-hitting jam session. We're not doing Dupree's at this point, so Frank kind of finds a way to work in Nappy, finds a way to work in his solo in here. Ruth gets a percussion solo that's fantastic. This is just, from start to finish, an amazing show. The sound is good. There are a couple moments when there's a tape flip obviously going on, and there's an audience patch that kind of covers those moments, but they're, like less than a minute. Just another amazing example of what Frank was doing in 74. Opens up with a great tush, tush, tush. Ruth is taking a lot of jabs from George and Nappy. There's carrots are involved, cabbage is involved. Pretty much you can call any vegetable you want at this point. Stinkfoot, Frank, that first little break solo between like the verses, he comes out super aggressive, hits every is not just shredding just for the purpose of shredding, but there seems to be this like compositional, purposeful element in this attack. And then when we get the full solo afterwards, it's a little more focused, but also a little more laid back, but still kind of just pushing it, kind of exploratory in ways. Towards the end of the solo, he starts really playing at the low end and getting some low funkier notes. Quotes whipping post at one point, just a dun 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 dun. Just, I've always said Stinkfoot kind of sets the tone for the rest of the show, guitar solo wise, whether it's here in 74 or whether we get 77 Stinkfoots or 76. And again, I think it's completely setting the tone for this show. Focused, purposeful, aggressive, not unwilling to pull it back when needed, but also not unwilling to just go super aggressive and super low at times. And all of it feeling composed. Early on this leg of the tour, before Tom Fowler broke his hand, there were moments when you feel like you had a groove going in a solo and Frank would just abandon it, and all of a sudden things would feel like they would fall apart, but they never would, because that Chester Frank dynamic, it seems just almost rubber band tight. Frank's not doing that very much here. There are moments when he does that little 74 diversion, but I think because we don't have Fowler on bass, he's not going to like just he's not going to make it harder on bird legs than he has to. So all these solos really have this awesome sort of narrative thread that seems to run through them. Excellent string foot solo. Then we get a redunzo. Bass playing sounds great. Solo from the start feels focused, feels like there's a plan in place. We do get aggressive. There are some great George Duke keyboards in the mix in which he's just playing like a single chord or alternating between chords and letting this wash just like support what Frank is doing. And the way this soundboard recording is mixed, that it just works. I'm sure he does it a lot more often than we hear, but in this particular mix, it sounds really good. Chester is kind of just going crazy at times supporting Frank, but Bird Legs is really holding it down on the bass end. Just, I don't think this is the best redunzo solo of the tour. I think the one from the previous show is maybe one of the best redunzo solos ever, but the bar is so high at this point that this is just another absolutely S tier. If there were to be a box set of like Shut Up and Play Your Guitar, the 74 version, this solo belongs on there. It's absolutely fantastic. And then it's about 5 minutes long too. So Frank has time to explore ideas and develop motifs and like, absolutely epic. We can share some dog in the vocal part. We can share some dog. So we're heavy on the Marty. We get a story about a dog named Bo later in the show. That rhymed. FZ's, Frank Zappa's rhythm guitar during the entire show. Fantastic. He seems a lot more active than he definitely was earlier in November when he was sick and was probably taking like solo opportunities by other band members to like chill out and like save his energy. He is fully active, doing really interesting things. There were moments, I don't think it's in this solo, it might be in a later solo in like the George part where Frank's almost playing like Bob Weird type rhythm support, just these weird little funky higher chords. Just there's some pretty fascinating stuff. The Village is fantastic. Another great sax solo. The bass playing on The Village is really good. The bass is giving it more of this. The overall Village has this more of just a poppy, upbeat dancing vibe just because of the way Bird Legs is playing that bass part as opposed to Fowler. FC's super fun in the rhythm. Echidna Zarf, I think Bird Legs changes his bass tone because it just seems a little bit fatter and spacier and absolutely works. Don't You Ever Wash That Thing. Ruth's Bacchosaur, we find that out from Frank. Pretty standard, Don't You Ever Wash That Thing. Goes into Penguin in Bondage. Another great, this is interesting, like early in November when Frank was really forcing the sort of like experimental solos, the Penguins and the Cosmic Debris were just sort of these consistent like bedrocks of solid playing. This is another consistent bedrock of solid playing. But as with the previous show, in this show, it really is the weakest solo because the Stinkfoot one is just defining the night. The Redunzo one is just top tier. The ones that are still to come are just, again, Frank reaching 79 level heights of greatness, which is the other, one of many great guitar tours. So it's just this like enjoyable little Frank doing more normal bluesy stuff break, but still fantastic. Then we get the Tamershi Dog Meat Girl routine. Before that, as we're getting the drums, as we're finishing the Don't You Ever Wash That Thing drum solo, Frank's like, he says something like, "Look out, Bird Legs, here it comes." And then they do the whole Tamershi Deween stuff. Frank didn't play it in the previous show. So I think maybe he gave Bird Legs an extra day to practice this. Girl is always fun. Building the Girl, just always fun to hear that. We get a Dynamo Hum that does not have audience participation. Instead, Frank tells the story of trying to find the origins of the Hum family. Apparently there was a basketball player in the previous city named Hum in a newspaper article. Now they got rumored that there were Hum relatives in St. Paul, Minnesota. So instead of there being audience participation, we get this little spiel, and then he plays that super loud part, rips off a quick little short, like Dirty Love style short solo. Then we go back into Dynamo Hum. Get a Camarillo Brillo, which always sounds great when they rip into that. And then for the next 42 minutes, we get some of the best stuff Frank has ever done. Montana. The Montana solo, clocking in at what? Close to 8 minutes, I think, is just absolutely epic. It's just absolutely epic. It starts off with a pretty like focused and aggressive sort of motif for about 30 seconds, which Frank's kind of just playing around with the same melody and kind of playing these same licks over and over again. And then he kind of stops. We kind of drop into this chill mode. So Frank can kind of like slowly rebuild it. We get a lot of like Frank Zappa, Chester Thompson sort of weirdness. They do that sort of single note staccato run where Frank will be like dun 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 and like just play like, you know, in a steady pattern of notes, and Chester's just like dun dun dun, like following him rhythmically. And their ability to like just drop into that on a dime is just at this point in the tour just it's just magical. And so this one's a lot more playful than other Montanas. We're not locked into any sort of like funk groove. And as the solo goes on and on and on, and we get some like 75, 76 Zoodalures type runs, it almost feels like this Montana has seceded from the United States and just become its own country. And like this solo has no relationship to Montana, the state. We're just like literally in our own space exploring. And it just goes on and on and on. Like it builds in intensity. Frank starts doing like chordal riffs, and then he goes off and does like these more like aggressive rock runs. It very much feels like a 79 Eco Rhodes. Go listen to Shut Up and Play Your Guitar, any of those title tracks. Go listen to Occam's Razor. Like just some of the most epic solos Frank has ever played. And this is kind of a Montana 74 version of that, with Chester Thompson on bass, on drums, and a guy who's only been with the band for 2 shows on bass. Just epic stuff. Duke has more of those just waves of synth sound. Just magical. An absolutely like magical solo. After that, we go into a 30-minute Boogerman, George Duke hitting his finger cymbal thing. Very interesting. About the first, we got 7 minutes of George and Frank kind of telling stories and George messing around with sounds, that kind of vibe. Really awesome proggy sounds by George. A lot of talking. But we get 7 minutes of it before like Frank starts conducting the band, and we get like a really short conducting session before the full band comes in. George gets a solo. We're just kind of laying down a groove. George doesn't get a long solo before Frank comes back in, and we're off in space on this time. We're telling a story about like aliens and stuff like that. We get a full-on Star Trek jam in which George and I think it's Napoleon are singing the theme to Star Trek, and then George starts playing the theme to Star Trek on his keyboards. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Frank then starts telling a story about a dog named Boo and a whistle and stuff that was going on with Marty. We get more of that stuff. And this goes on for about all of this stuff, this short little mini jams, the conducting part, storytelling, Frank interrupting George, George telling his thing. This goes on for about 13 minutes before we go into the Napoleon Murphy Brock solo, and we're end off like the jam session, the improv. We get a nappy solo that absolutely sounds fantastic. This might be, I think, where Frank's rhythm guitar kind of flirts with that weird vibe. And the transition into nappy solo is things are like kind of just getting crazy and chaotic during the Star Trek stuff. And all of a sudden we just get like this little drum fill and nappy just starts going off. And yeah, it's just really, really well done. We get a really cool Ruth solo in which Chester's just kind of keeping the beat, and Ruth's like pretty much attacking everything in her kit. And then about 20 minutes into the entire thing with about 10 minutes left, Frank steps up, plays the opening chords to Zoodalures, and we're off into a really Dupree's Paradise-esque Frank guitar solo. He does 2 minutes of sort of that kind of sketching with chords and stuff like that before he starts to get a little more aggressive. And then he jams for a couple more minutes, and then we get like a full-on breakdown a la like a Ritchie Blackmore where everybody else is just gone and Ritchie's just like tearing off licks. Frank kind of does this, though of course Chester is always ready with some really tasty fills. And then this doesn't last for very long, this breakdown moment, before the bass and the rhythm section just build us right back in to like I guess essentially the solo ending jam, which just goes on for several minutes. Just really, really good. And then at some point, the rhythm is established, and Frank just soars for a couple minutes. It's just like full flight solo. Just like doesn't sound like anything. It's just this weird little pocket of a new groove that Chester and Birdlegs are laying down, and Frank just gets to take off. And then he introduces the band, and we get a really cool jam after that, where Nappy's kind of going off again, and the band's just kind of playing and playing and playing. And then for the encore, we get an "Oh No, I Just Can't Believe You Go Arf Arf Arf." A great Son of Orange County that has some really tasty soloing, and then a show closing, More Trouble Every Day, which this solo in this almost feels like Frank's like, all right, I want to do a little bit of funk part, I want to do a little bit of aggression, I want to do a little bit of this, and it's just really, really short little pockets of ideas that Frank kind of links together, but they all have this very finale type, this is the end of the show vibe. Too short. I wish it could go longer, this solo, but we are at like, I think a couple hours this point into the show. So, yeah, it's fantastic. And then Frank comes in and goes, "Oh, we're done." Introduces the band. Goes, "Ricky, don't lose that number." And then he starts playing "Ricky, Don't Lose That Number" on his guitar before the show ends. Yeah, this thing is ridiculous. It's fantastic. The Montana solo, epic, epic. I mean, a must hear. The Redunzo solo, yet another near perfect Redunzo solo. Stinkfoot's bringing it. This Dupree's-esque, Zoot Allures-esque solo in the George thing. And yeah, absolutely amazing. And the sound is pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. Where would I rank the show among all the others? I have it at number 3. The sound on the 23rd at number 2 is not as good, but there's just some absolutely inspired moments that the set list kind of brings some more diversity than this one does. My number 1 show might be my favorite Zappa show of all time, that 17th show. And then we got the Erie show, the officially released show at number 4. I just think this one, the solos in this are just, I mean, that Montana solo, really, that Montana solo, just, I'm going to say it again, that Montana solo. Yeah, is really good stuff, people. All right, that's all I got for this. We had a couple more shows left in this, but we're going to hit a short little tour, and then we're going to hit another more major one. If you're looking forward to 82, it's going to be a while. 82 is one of the big ones. I don't want to burn all the big ones early, so sorry, you 82 fans. But we might hit maybe just Italy 80. No, we're gonna do 82 in order. But anyways, all right, that's it. I'm rambling. Thanks for watching. Peace. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do all those things, and peace. Talk to you later.